Captain Hyun-woo Kim stood at the window of the diplomatic vessel, watching the massive space station rotate slowly against the stars. The Galactic Council station was beautiful, he had to admit. It gleamed like a jewel with towers and rings that caught the light of the nearby sun. Ships from 100 different worlds docked at its ports. Some were elegant and curved like seashells. Others were brutal and angular like weapons. Earth's ship, the Horizon's Promise, looked plain and simple next to them. Hyun-woo sighed and adjusted his uniform. Today was the day. After 15 years of trying, Earth would finally get its answer. Would they be allowed to join the Galactic Council or not? "Captain, the ambassador is ready," Lieutenant Ji-won Park said behind him. She was young but sharp, with eyes that missed nothing. "He wants us on the observation deck in 10 minutes. How does he look?" Hyun-woo asked, nervous, but determined. Hyun-woo nodded. Ambassador Sungmin Lee had worked his entire career for this moment. The man had learned 17 alien languages. He had studied their cultures, their histories, their laws. He had negotiated trade deals that brought Earth prosperity. He had done everything right. But still, the council kept saying no. They walked together through the corridors of the station. Aliens of every shape and size moved past them. Some had 4 arms, others had scales or fur or skin that changed colors. A few glanced at the humans with curiosity. Most ignored them completely. The observation deck was a circular room with windows all around. It overlooked the main council chamber below. Hyun-woo could see hundreds of delegates taking their seats. At the center sat Speaker Velthar, the leader of the Krithian Empire. He was tall and thin, with silver skin and eyes like black mirrors. His people controlled a third of the galaxy. When he spoke, others listened. Ambassador Sungmin stood alone near the window, hands clasped behind his back. His gray hair was perfectly combed. His face showed no emotion. But Hyun-woo had known him for 5 years. He could see the tension in the man's shoulders. "Ambassador," Hyun-woo said quietly. "Captain, Lieutenant." Sungmin didn't turn around. "Thank you for being here." "We wouldn't be anywhere else, sir." Below, the chamber grew quiet. Speaker Velthar rose from his seat. His voice echoed through the room, translated instantly into every language. "We gathered today to discuss the petition of Earth. Once again, the humans ask to join our council. Once again, we must consider their request." Ji-won's hand tightened on the railing. Hyun-woo kept his face neutral. "The humans are a young species," Velthar continued. "They achieved faster than light travel only 60 years ago. They have no major wars to their credit, no great victories, no powerful enemies defeated. They come to us with, trade goods? Cultural exchanges? These things are pleasant, but they do not make a civilization worthy of this council." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. Some delegates nodded. Others made gestures of approval in their own alien ways. Ambassador Sungmin's jaw tightened, but he remained silent. "Let me speak plainly," Velthar said, and now his voice carried a mocking edge. "The humans are silent children playing with fire. They have discovered how to cross the stars, yes, but they do not understand the responsibilities that come with it. They have no real military, no ability to defend themselves or their allies. They bring nothing of value to this council except requests for protection and guidance." Hyun-woo felt anger burning in his chest. Ji-won's breathing had quickened. But they were military officers. They knew how to control themselves. "The Krithian Empire has fought in 40 wars," Velthar continued. "We have defended this galaxy against threats the humans cannot imagine. The Torvan Confederacy has 30 systems under their protection. The Helixian Collective has technology that bends space itself. What do the humans have? Farming colonies, trade stations, ships with primitive weapons that we deactivated centuries ago." He paused, looking up directly at the observation deck. "And Ambassador Sungmin, perhaps when you learn to roar, we will listen. Until then, remain silent." The chamber erupted in sounds. Some aliens laughed. Others buzzed or clicked or hummed in their equivalent of amusement. A few looked uncomfortable, but none spoke up. Ambassador Sungmin stood perfectly still. His face had gone pale, but his expression never changed. He simply turned and walked toward the exit. Hyun-woo and Ji-won followed. They didn't speak until they were back on the Horizon's Promise. The ambassador went straight to his quarters. The door closed behind him with a soft hiss. "Sir," Ji-won said quietly, "permission to speak freely?" "Granted." That was humiliating. 15 years of work. 15 years of negotiations and compromises and playing by their rules, and they mock us like we're nothing. Hyunwoo sat down heavily in the captain's chair. They don't understand us. They think because we don't fight wars like they do, we're weak. Are we? Ji-won asked. Weak, I mean. Our military is small compared to theirs. We have good ships, but not many. We've never been tested in a real war. We've been tested, Hyunwoo said quietly. Earth has seen plenty of war. We just learned to fight differently. Smarter. More efficiently. He looked at his tactical officer. Why do you ask? Ji-won pulled up a display on her tablet. Because while we were in that meeting, I was monitoring our intelligence feeds. Captain, the Krithian fleet is moving. Hyunwoo was on his feet instantly. Where? Toward the outer colonies. Specifically toward New Seoul. The blood drained from Hyunwoo's face. New Seoul was Earth's largest colony. 3 million people. Families, children, farms and factories and schools. It was humanity's greatest achievement beyond Earth itself. Why would they move toward New Seoul? We have no dispute with the Krithians. No official dispute, Ji-won said. But think about it, sir. They just publicly humiliated us. Told us we're nothing. Told the whole galaxy that Earth has no teeth. What better way to prove their point than to push us around? Show everyone that humans will just accept whatever happens to them? Hyunwoo's hands clenched into fists. Get me Admiral Kang on a secure channel. And wake up Ambassador Lee. He needs to know about this immediately. Yes, sir. As Ji-won hurried to carry out the orders, Hyunwoo looked out at the stars again. The Galactic Council station still gleamed beautifully in the distance. But now it looked different to him. Now it looked like what it really was. A place where the strong made the rules and the weak were crushed. Speaker Velthar's words echoed in his mind. Perhaps when you learn to roar, we will listen. Until then, remain silent. Hyunwoo's reflection stared back at him from the window. His face was hard. His eyes were cold. They want us to roar, he whispered to himself. They have no idea what they're asking for. Behind him, alarms began to sound. Red lights flashed on the communications console. Ji-won's voice was tight with controlled panic. Captain, we're receiving emergency transmissions from New Seoul. Multiple ships entering orbit, Captain. The Krithians are attacking. Hyunwoo turned from the window. The time for silence was over. Colonel Jae-sung Choi was drinking coffee when the world ended. He had been reviewing supply reports in his office at New Seoul Defense Command. The coffee was local, grown in the Valley Farms. It tasted like home, even though home was Earth 20 light-years away. He had just taken a sip when every alarm in the building started screaming at once. His deputy burst through the door. Sir, multiple contacts entering orbit. 37 ships. They're Krithian! Jae-sung dropped his coffee cup. It shattered on the floor, but he was already running toward the command center. Battle stations. Get everyone up. Contact the orbital defense platforms. The command center was chaos. Officers shouted into headsets. Displays showed dozens of red dots descending from orbit. Commander Tae-yang Shin's face appeared on the main screen, transmitted from the orbital defense station Sentinel. Colonel, we're tracking 37 Krithian warships. They're not responding to hails. They're charging weapons. How long until they're in firing range? 6 minutes. Sir, we're outnumbered almost 40-1. Jae-sung's mind raced. The Sentinel had good weapons for a defense station, but it was designed to handle pirates and raiders, not a fleet. Can you hold them? Tae-yang's face was grim. I can slow them down. Buy you time to evacuate the cities. How much time? As much as I can give you. The screen went dark as Tae-yang cut the connection. He had work to do. Jae-sung turned to his communications officer. Send an emergency broadcast. All citizens to evacuation shelters immediately. This is not a drill. Contact the civilian government. Get the transport ships ready. We need to start moving people off-world now. Sir, we have 3 million people on this colony. We can't evacuate everyone in— I know, Jae-sung snapped. Then more quietly, I know. But we save who we can. Move. Across New Seoul, sirens began to wail. In the cities, people looked up at the sky in confusion. Many of them had never heard these alarms before. New Seoul had been peaceful for its entire 50-year history. Dr. Hana Yoon was in her laboratory when the sirens started. She was a botanist, working on crop improvements that would help feed the growing colony. She had 300 plant samples, years of research, irreplaceable data. Her life's work. Her assistant, a young man named Dae-hyun, ran in. Dr. Yoon, We have to evacuate. What? Why? The Crithians are attacking. Everyone to the shelters. Hana stared at him. The Crithians? Why would they attack New Sol? Earth had no conflict with them. This had to be a mistake. Let me save my research first, and the building shook. Dust fell from the ceiling. Through the window, Hana saw a streak of light cross the sky. Then an explosion bloomed on the horizon, orange and terrible. Now, Dr. Yoon. Now. She grabbed what she could. A data storage device. A few sample cases. Then she was running, following Dae-hyun down the stairs as more explosions shook the city. In orbit, Commander Tae-yang Shin fought the battle of his life. The Sentinel was a good station. It had railguns and missile batteries and thick armor, but it was designed to protect against one or two hostile ships, not an entire fleet. The Crithian vessels surrounded it like predators circling prey. Focus fire on the lead cruiser, Tae-yang ordered. Hit them with everything. The Sentinel's weapons blazed. Railgun slugs crossed the distance in seconds. Missiles streaked toward their targets. The lead Crithian cruiser's shields flared and buckled. For a moment, Tae-yang felt hope. Then the other 36 ships opened fire. The Sentinel shuddered under the impact. Hull breaches on decks 4 through 7. Life support failing in the eastern ring. Casualty reports flooding in. But still, Tae-yang's crew fought. Still, they fired back. Sir, they're trying to get past us, his tactical officer shouted. 10 ships breaking formation to attack the surface. Don't let them through. Target those ships. Make them pay for every meter. 3 of the breaking ships exploded under the Sentinel's desperate fire, but 7 got through. They descended toward New Sol like angels of death. On the surface, Colonel Jae-sung watched the orbital battle through his sensors. He saw the Sentinel fighting impossible odds. He saw the Crithian ships breaking through. He knew what was coming. All defense batteries fire at will, air defense systems to maximum. Shoot down anything that comes close. The ground shook as New Sol's defensive weapons opened fire. Anti-ship missiles rose on pillars of flame. Point defense lasers drew lines of light across the sky. The colonists had decent weapons for ground defense. They had prepared for the possibility of attack. They just never thought it would actually happen. One Crithian ship exploded. Then another. But 5 kept coming. They opened fire on the cities. The destruction was total. Plasma beams turned buildings to vapor. Kinetic strikes hit with the force of nuclear weapons. Entire city blocks vanished in moments. Thousands died before they could reach shelters. Thousands more died in the shelters when they took direct hits. Hana made it to an evacuation zone. Hundreds of people were crowding toward the transport ships. Children crying. Parents clutching babies. Old people struggling to keep up. She saw neighbors she had known for years. She saw colleagues from the university. She saw fear on every face. A transport ship lifted off, packed with refugees. Then another. Then another. But there weren't enough ships. There would never be enough ships, please. My daughter is still in the city, a woman screamed. We'll come back for her, a soldier lied. They both knew he was lying. Hana climbed aboard a transport. She found a seat next to a window. As the ship lifted off, she looked down at New Sol, the city she had called home for 12 years. The place where she had married, where she had done her best work, where she had been happy. Half of it was on fire. The other half was rubble. In orbit, the Sentinel was dying. Commander Tae-yang had lost count of the hits they had taken. The station was venting atmosphere from 100 breaches. Most of his weapons were destroyed. His crew was down to 60% strength. But they had held the Crithians for 6 hours. 6 hours for the evacuation ships to launch. 6 hours for people to escape. Sir, the Crithians are demanding our surrender, his communications officer said. Tae-yang looked at his screens. 20 Crithian ships still surrounded them. Below, the last evacuation transports were leaving the surface. He had bought the time he needed to buy. Tell them... Tae-yang smiled. It was not a happy smile. Tell them Earth remembers its dead. He entered his command codes. The self-destruct sequence activated. His crew knew what was coming. None of them ran. None of them complained. They had done their duty. That was enough. It's been an honor serving with you all. Tae-yang said quietly. The Sentinel exploded with the force of a small sun. The blast caught 3 Crithian cruisers that had closed in too near. They vanished in the fireball. The other Crithian ships pulled back, damaged and wary. But the Sentinel was gone. And New Sol was defenseless. The Crithian fleet spent 2 more hours destroying what remained. They targeted the spaceport so no more ships could leave. They destroyed the farms and the factories. They burned the forests and poisoned the rivers. They wanted to make sure New Sol could never be rebuilt. When they finally left, New Sol was dead. 400,000 people had not made it to the evacuation ships. 400,000 colonists who had done nothing wrong, who had harmed no one, who had just wanted to build a life on a new world. 400,000 bodies cooling under an alien sky. Captain Hyun-woo received the final transmission from New Sol as his ship raced toward the colony. It was audio only, sent from an underground shelter in the capital city. All he heard was children screaming, then static, then nothing. Hyun-woo sat in his captain's chair, staring at the dead communication channel. Ji-won stood beside him, tears running down her face. Around the bridge, the crew was silent. "Captain," the navigator finally said. "Orders?" Hyun-woo didn't answer for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was cold and empty. "Set course for Earth, maximum speed. We need to report this." "And then, sir?" Hyun-woo looked at the screen, at the star where New Sol had been. "Then we show them what happens when you make Earth roar." The silence began on the 61st day after New Sol died. Earth stopped answering calls from the Galactic Council. The human embassy on the Council Station closed its doors. Human trade ships returned home and did not come back out. Every human presence across the galaxy simply vanished overnight. It was as if humanity had decided to crawl back into its corner of space and hide. On the Council Station, Speaker Velthar was pleased. "The humans have learned their lesson," he announced to the gathered delegates. "They understand now that the galaxy belongs to those strong enough to claim it. Perhaps in a century or two, they will have the courage to emerge again." The other delegates murmured agreement. A few looked uncomfortable with what had happened to New Sol, but none spoke against it. This was how the galaxy worked. The strong survived. The weak perished. It had always been this way. None of them knew what was really happening behind Earth's silence. Admiral Dong-Hyun Kang stood in the war room deep beneath Earth's capital city. The room was massive, filled with displays showing every human ship, every colony, every military installation. Hundreds of officers worked at stations coordinating the largest military mobilization in human history. "Status report," Dong-Hyun said calmly. Minister Yeon Hee-han, Earth's defense minister, pulled up a holographic display. "All colonial populations have been evacuated to fortified positions. Every civilian ship has been converted for military support. The reserves have been activated. Total personnel, 3 million combat troops, 8 million support staff. And the fleet?" A smile crossed Yeon-hee's face. "The fleet is ready, Admiral." "All of it?" Dong-Hyun nodded slowly. He was 70 years old and had served in Earth's military for 50 of those years. He had fought in the border wars. He had commanded ships during the resource conflicts. He had seen what humanity could do when it was truly pushed. "Contact Captain Lim. I want her report on intelligence gathering." Captain Sora Lim appeared on the main screen. She was young for her rank, only 35, but she had a mind like a steel trap. She ran Earth's intelligence division, and she knew more about the Crithian Empire than the Crithians knew about themselves. "Admiral, we have complete information on Crithian military deployments. I have the locations of 47 major installations, 312 minor bases, and 63 shipyards. I also have the command codes for their communications network. We can listen to everything they say." "How did you get the command codes?" Sora's expression didn't change. "Trade secrets, sir. But I assure you they're genuine. I've been testing them for the past 3 weeks. Dong-Hyun allowed himself a small smile. "Good work, Captain. What do the Crithians think we're doing right now?" "They think we're cowering, sir. Their intelligence reports say Earth is in chaos. They believe we might be preparing to surrender our remaining colonies to avoid further attacks. Speaker Velthar has already divided up our territory among his allies." "Has he now?" Dong-Hyun's smile faded. "How confident is he?" "Extremely. He sent most of his fleet back to regular patrols. He believes the threat from Earth is over. Then he's a fool." Minister Yeon-hee pulled up another display. This one showed ships, thousands of them. "The Crithians think we have a small military. They think our fleet consists of maybe 100 warships with outdated weapons. They're wrong," the display zoomed out. More ships appeared. Then more, then more. The numbers kept climbing. 200. 500. 1,000. 1,500. 2,000. We've been building in secret for 40 years, Yanhee continued. Hidden shipyards in the asteroid belts. Automated factories on remote moons. Every year we built more ships and stored them in deep space. We knew this day would come. We knew eventually someone would push us too far. Dong-hyun looked at the fleet display. 2,000 warships. Each one built with one purpose, to fight and win against superior numbers. What about weapons? The Krithians have shields that can stop energy weapons. Our ships use kinetic weapons, sir. Railguns, mass drivers, nuclear missiles. Old technology by galactic standards, but shields don't stop solid matter moving at relativistic speeds. A tungsten rod moving at half the speed of light hits with more force than any energy weapon. And it's cheap. We can fire hundreds of them per ship. Sora added her own input. The Krithians design their shields for energy weapons because that's what everyone in the galaxy uses. Plasma beams, lasers, particle weapons. They're effective and clean. But humans never stopped using kinetic weapons. We just made them better, faster, more accurate. The Krithians have no defense against them. Dong-hyun walked to the window. Outside he could see the city. Billions of people going about their lives, working, studying, raising families. They had no idea that their world was preparing for war. They knew about New Seoul, of course. Everyone knew. But they didn't know what was coming next. How many will we lose? Dong-hyun asked quietly. Yanhee hesitated. If everything goes according to plan, maybe 10% of the fleet. If things go wrong, 50%, maybe more. And if we do nothing, the Krithians will take more colonies, kill more civilians. Eventually, they'll come for Earth itself. We'll lose everything. Dong-hyun turned back to face the room. Then we fight. Not because we want to, but because they've left us no choice. Protocol Teguk is now active. Begin the final preparations. Across Earth and its remaining colonies, the military machine came to life. Ships that had been stored in the dark for decades powered up. Crews that had trained in secret boarded their vessels. Weapons were loaded. Systems were checked and double-checked. Young Soo Park was one of those crews. He was 23 years old, a Marine corporal, and he had been training for this his entire adult life. His sister Ji-won was serving on the Horizon's Promise with Captain Hyun-woo. He hoped she was safe. His squad gathered in the troop bay of the assault ship Thunderstrike. There were 40 of them, all young, all strong, all ready. Their sergeant, a grizzled veteran named Chang-woo, addressed them. Listen up. In 72 hours, we're going to hit a Krithian military base. You've trained for this. You know your jobs. But let me make one thing clear. We're not going in there for revenge. We're going in there to win. We fight smart. We fight together. And we come home. Understood? Yes, Sergeant, the squad shouted. Young Soo checked his weapons for the 100th time. His rifle, his sidearm, his combat knife. Everything was perfect. Everything was ready. He thought about New Seoul, about the 400,000 dead, about the children in that final transmission. He would make them pay for every single life. Back in the war room, Dong-hyun addressed his senior officers. Captain Hyun-woo was there, his face hard. Lieutenant Ji-won stood beside him. Dozens of other commanders filled the room, each one responsible for a piece of the coming battle. The Galactic Council thinks we're silent because we're afraid, Dong-hyun said. They think we're weak. They think we'll accept whatever they do to us. They're about to learn how wrong they are. He pulled up a star map. Red markers showed Krithian positions. Blue markers showed human forces. There were so many blue markers, more than anyone in the galaxy suspected. In 72 hours we strike, not at one target, at 15 targets simultaneously. We hit their military bases, their shipyards, their command centers. We hit them so hard and so fast that they won't have time to respond. And then, while they're reeling, we hit them again, and again, until they surrender or until they're destroyed. What about the Galactic Council? Someone asked. Will they intervene? Let them try, Dong-hyun said coldly. They stood by and watched while New Seoul burned. They're complicit in every death. If they get in our way, they'll learn the same lesson the Krithians are about to learn. And what lesson is that, sir? Dong-hyun looked at each officer in turn. These were good people, honorable people. They had joined the military to protect humanity, not to wage war. But war had come to them anyway. The lesson is simple, he said. Humanity doesn't start fights, but we finish them. The room was silent for a moment. Then as one, every officer saluted. They understood. They were ready. Hyunwoo remained after the others left. Admiral, permission to speak freely? Granted. Is this justice or revenge? Dong-hyun considered the question. Does it matter? They killed 400,000 civilians. They mocked us. They thought we would do nothing. Now we show them the truth. And what truth is that? The old admiral's eyes were cold. That the scariest thing in the galaxy isn't the species that roars the loudest. It's the species that stays quiet. Because when we finally speak, we don't use words. Hyunwoo nodded slowly. When do we launch? 72 hours. Get your ship ready, Captain, and say goodbye to Earth. Some of us won't be coming back. As Hyunwoo left, Dong-hyun returned to the window. The city below was peaceful, beautiful, worth protecting. He had been a soldier for 50 years. He had always known this day might come. The Krithians wanted Earth to roar. Soon they would hear something much worse. They would hear the sound of 2,000 warships dropping into their space. They would hear the thunder of railguns firing. They would hear the screams of their own people as their bases burned. And maybe, if they were lucky, they would live long enough to understand their mistake. The silence would end in 72 hours. And then the cannons would speak. The Krithian officer on duty at Station Krevel 7 was bored. His shift had been quiet for weeks. Nothing ever happened out here in the outer sectors. The humans had gone silent after New Sol. The galaxy was peaceful. He was considering taking an early break when every alarm on his console started screaming. Contact. Multiple contacts. Ships entering the system. His supervisor rushed over. How many? I'm counting 60. No, 80. By the ancestors, there's over 100 ships. They're human! That's impossible. The humans don't have that many ships. Then explain what I'm seeing. The display showed Earth ships dropping out of faster-than-light travel. They appeared in perfect formation, spread across a three-dimensional sphere. At the center was a massive dreadnought, its hull painted with the name Incheon's Fury. On the bridge of the Incheon's Fury, Captain Byung-ho Nam watched his displays calmly. Status? All ships in position, sir. Weapons charged, shields at maximum, target locks acquired. Open a channel to the station. Byung-ho waited until the connection was established. Krithian Station Krevel 7. This is Captain Nam of the United Earth Fleet. You attacked our colony New Sol without provocation. You killed 400,000 civilians. You mocked us for our silence. Your silence ends now. You have 2 minutes to evacuate your station before we open fire. The Krithian officer stared at his screen in disbelief. You dare threaten us? We are the Krithian Empire! We rule this sector. You're nothing but primitives with stolen technology. Byung-ho checked his chronometer. 1 minute 40 seconds. We'll destroy you. Our fleet will crush you like insects. 1 minute 20 seconds. The Krithian officer's supervisor grabbed his arm. Broadcast the evacuation signal. Now, but sir, now. Alarms blared through the station. Krithians ran for the escape pods. Some made it. Some didn't. Time moved too quickly. 10 seconds, Byung-ho said. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, fire. The Incheon's Fury had 12 railguns running the length of its hull. Each one fired a tungsten rod the size of a telephone pole. The rods accelerated to 40% of light speed in 3 seconds. At that velocity, they carried more kinetic energy than a nuclear weapon. The Krithian station had shields. Good shields designed to stop plasma beams and particle weapons. But shields worked by deflecting or absorbing energy. They weren't designed to stop solid matter. The tungsten rods passed through the shields like they weren't there. Station Krevel 7 broke apart. Entire sections exploded. The reactor went critical. The blast lit up the system like a second sun. Target destroyed, the tactical officer reported. Minimal damage to our ships. Good, move to the next target. And transmit the recording to Earth Command. Let them know it's begun. Across the galaxy, the same scene played out at 14 other locations. Earth fleets appeared without warning. Krithian bases and shipyards that had stood for centuries vanished in minutes. The Krithians tried to fight back, but their weapons couldn't penetrate the Earth ship's armor. Their shields couldn't stop the kinetic weapons. In one system, a Krithian commander managed to organize a counterattack. 20 Krithian cruisers against 30 human destroyers. The battle lasted 4 minutes. When it was over, 18 Krithian ships were debris. 2 had surrendered. The human fleet had lost 3 ships. Commander Kyung-mi Cho led Thunder Squadron in that battle. Her fighter was small and fast, armed with missiles that the Krithians called primitive. Nuclear missiles. Simple technology, old technology. But a 50-megaton nuclear warhead didn't care how advanced your shields were. Thunder Squadron, this is Thunder Leader, Kyung-mi transmitted. Break into attack pairs. Target their engines. Let's make this quick. Her wingman, a pilot named Ho Jin, flew close beside her. They dove toward a Krithian cruiser dodging defensive fire. The Krithians were good shots. Energy beams crossed the space around them. But Kyung-mi had been flying combat simulations since she was 16. This was what she lived for. Fox 3. She fired 2 missiles. They streaked toward the cruiser, their targeting systems locked on the engine ports. The Krithian point defenses took out 1 missile. The second got through. The nuclear fireball engulfed the cruiser's rear section. When the light cleared, the ship was tumbling, dead in space. Kyung-mi pulled up, already searching for her next target. Thunder 2, good kill. Ho-jin transmitted. Thunder 7 is hit. Kyung-mi looked at her tactical display. Thunder 7 was a young pilot named Subin, only 20 years old. Her fighter was venting atmosphere. She was alive, but her ship was dying. Thunder 7, eject. Eject now. Can't, leader. Ejection system is damaged. Then dock with the nearest ship, hurry. Subin managed to limp her fighter to a human destroyer. She crashed into the hangar bay more than docked, but she survived. That was what mattered. The battle ended quickly after that. The remaining Krithian ships surrendered when they realized they couldn't win. Kyung-mi brought her squadron home. They had lost Thunder 7's fighter, but the pilot was safe. It was a victory. On the ground, Major Jin-ah Song was having a different kind of fight. Her marine company had boarded a Krithian supply depot. The mission was simple: capture the command center and seize their supply records. They needed to know where the Krithians kept their stockpiles, where their fleets refueled. Information was a weapon too. Jin-ah led from the front. Her combat armor made her stronger and faster than any unaugmented human. Her rifle could punch through Krithian body armor like paper. Her squad moved through the corridors like shadows. The Krithians fought back. They were good soldiers, trained and experienced, but they had never fought humans in close combat before. They expected their enemies to use tactics like they did. Stand off at range, exchange fire from cover, fight like civilized beings. Humans didn't fight like that. Jin-ah's squad used grenades to flush enemies from cover. They used flashbangs to disorient. They moved fast and hit hard, never giving the Krithians time to organize. When her point man, Corporal Young-soo Park, encountered a sealed door, he didn't wait for a cutting torch. He attached a breaching charge and blew the door off its hinges. The Krithians on the other side were still reeling from the blast when the Marines poured through. It wasn't a fight. It was a slaughter. Young-soo tried not to think about what he was doing. He tried not to see the Krithians' faces. They were the enemy. They had killed New Seoul. They had killed 400,000 civilians. This was justice, but it still felt like murder. Command center secured, Jin-ah reported. Enemy commander is requesting to surrender. Accepted, came the reply from the fleet. Secure the prisoners and extract the data. Good work, Major. Jin-ah looked around the command center. Dead Krithians lay everywhere. Her own squad had taken casualties too. 3 wounded, 1 dead. A Marine named Soo-jin, 24 years old. She had a husband and a baby daughter back on Earth. This was the cost of war. This was what victory looked like up close. The attacks continued for 12 hours. By the end of that time, the Krithian military infrastructure was in ruins. Bases destroyed, shipyards burning, supply lines cut. The mighty Krithian Empire had been crippled in half a day. Speaker Velthar received the reports in his chambers on the council station. At first, he refused to believe them. The humans couldn't have 2,000 ships. It was impossible. But the reports kept coming. The evidence was undeniable. He called an emergency session of his military command. The holographic faces of his admirals appeared around him, each one bringing worse news. We've lost 70% of our forward bases. Our shipyards in the outer sectors are destroyed. Fleet Group 3 was annihilated. 20 ships lost. The humans are using kinetic weapons. Our shields are useless. Velthar slammed his fist on the table. How did this happen? How did they hide such a fleet? None of his admirals had an answer. What do we do now? One of them asked. Velthar thought quickly. Pride warred with survival instinct. The humans had shown they were strong, stronger than he had ever imagined. But he was the speaker of the Crithian Empire. He couldn't show weakness. We counterattack. Gather every ship we have. Crush them before they can strike again. Sir, that will take time. We need to reorganize, then organize quickly. I want the human homeworld under our guns within a week. The hologram of Admiral Kethvar, his most experienced commander, shook his head. Speaker, we should consider a ceasefire. The humans have proven they can hurt us. Perhaps we should negotiate. Negotiate? With primitives, never. We are the Crithian Empire! We do not bow to inferiors. Then the Empire will fall, Kethvar said quietly. Because I have studied the human attacks. They were coordinated, precise, professional. These are not the actions of an inferior species. These are the actions of a military that has been planning this war for years. Are you suggesting we surrender? I'm suggesting we survive. Velthar closed the channel. Kethvar was old and cautious. He didn't understand what was at stake. If the Crithian Empire showed weakness now, every species in the galaxy would turn on them. They had to win. They had to show strength. He began issuing orders. Every ship was to rally at Krival Prime, the heart of the Empire. They would mass their remaining forces. Build an impenetrable defense. Let the humans come. Let them break themselves against Crithian strength. But in a hidden listening post, Captain Sora Lim smiled as she... The morning sky over New Pyongyang burned with 3 suns, each casting a different shadow across the landing platform. Hyun stood at the edge of the massive plaza, watching the Valethran ships descend like silver daggers cutting through clouds. Around him, thousands of colonists waited in silence. They knew what was coming. Everyone in the galaxy knew what happened when the Valethrans arrived at your world. Hyun adjusted his simple gray suit and checked his tablet one last time. As colony administrator, he was responsible for greeting the Valethrans and accepting their terms. It was supposed to be a formality. Every species in the known galaxy had already submitted to the Valethran Empire. The insectoid Vrex had knelt. The massive Nalthor, who lived in ocean worlds and could crush a human with one limb, had bowed their great heads. Even the ancient Quelm, beings made of living crystal who had mastered space travel before humans learned to make fire, had accepted Valethran rule. The ships landed with barely a whisper. That was the thing about Valethran technology. It was so advanced it seemed like magic. The boarding ramps extended and the delegation emerged. Hyun had seen Valethrans before on video feeds, but seeing them in person was different. They were tall, nearly 3 meters high, with skin that shimmered like oil on water. Their faces were angular and sharp, with too many joints in their limbs. They moved with the confidence of a species that had ruled the galaxy for 10,000 years. At the front walked Overseer Kelthax. His ceremonial armor caught the light of all 3 suns, making him look like he was wrapped in liquid starlight. Behind him came 50 soldiers, their weapons clearly visible. The message was clear. This was not a negotiation. Hyun walked forward to meet them, his footsteps echoing across the plaza. Behind him, the human delegation followed. There was Somin, the young engineer who maintained the colony's power grid. Next to her walked Jiwan, captain of the supply ships that traveled between human worlds. Dozens of others came too, representing every settlement on New Pyongyang. Kelthax stopped 10 meters away and regarded Hyun with eyes that had no pupils, just swirling pools of silver. When he spoke, his voice came through a translator device that made it sound hollow and cold. I am Overseer Kelthax of the Valethran Empire. I speak with the voice of Empress Valendra, whose reign has lasted 3,000 years, whose empire spans 10,000 worlds. You will acknowledge her authority. Hyun bowed his head slightly, a gesture of respect between equals. I am Hyun, administrator of New Pyongyang Colony. On behalf of humanity, I welcome you to our world. Something flickered across Kelthax's face. Surprise, maybe, or amusement. Welcome? Small human, you misunderstand. We do not require your welcome. We require your submission. The ceremony will begin. The Valethran soldiers moved with practiced efficiency, setting up the ceremonial space in the center of the plaza. A massive holographic projector rose from a case, and within seconds, the image of Empress Valendra appeared before them. She was even taller than Kelthax, wearing robes that seemed to be made of captured starlight. Her face was ancient and cold, beautiful in the way a knife blade is beautiful. Representatives from other species were already arriving, having been summoned from the orbital station above. The Vrex ambassador came first, its compound eyes gleaming in the sunlight, its 6 legs clicking against the stone. Then came the Nalthor envoy, floating in a tank of methane, its tentacles pressed against the glass. One by one they assembled. 12 species, all subjects of the Empire. Kelthax's voice boomed across the plaza. The ceremony of chains will commence. Each species will kneel before the Empress and speak the words of acceptance. You will acknowledge that your worlds, your resources, and your lives belong to the Empire. You will acknowledge that the Empress's will is law. You will kneel. The Vrex went first, the insect-like being lowered itself until its thorax touched the ground. We kneel before the Eternal Empire. We accept the chains that bind us to order and peace. The Nalthor went next, its tank lowering on repulsor lifts. We kneel before the Eternal Empire. We accept the chains that bind us to order and peace. One by one, each species knelt. Some did it quickly, as if eager to finish an unpleasant task. Others did it slowly, with visible reluctance. But all of them did it. 10 species knelt and spoke the words. Then it was humanity's turn. Kelthax looked at Hyun with those swirling silver eyes. Human representative, you will kneel before the Empress. You will speak the words. Hyun looked up at the holographic image of Empress Valendra. She stared down at him with the kind of boredom that came from watching this same ceremony on 10,000 worlds. He looked at Kelthax. He looked at the soldiers with their weapons. He looked back at his people standing behind him in the plaza. Then Hyun clasped his hands behind his back and simply stood there. Silence fell across the plaza like a physical thing. The other species representatives turned to stare. The Valethran soldiers shifted, uncertain. Kelthax tilted his head as if he had misheard something. Human, you will kneel. Hyun's voice was calm and clear. No, the word hung in the air. Kelthax stepped closer, towering over Hyun. You refuse the ceremony? You refuse the Empire? I refuse to kneel, Hyun said. Humans kneel to no one. Not out of arrogance, not out of stupidity, but out of principle. We have learned this lesson over thousands of years, written in the blood of our ancestors. The moment you kneel to power simply because it is powerful, you have already lost everything that makes life worth living. Kelthax made a sound that the translator couldn't quite process. You are one small species on one small world. The Empire controls 10,000 worlds. Trillions of beings have knelt before the Empress. What makes you think you can refuse? Because someone has to, Hyun said simply. Because if not me, then who? If not now, then when? I have studied human history, Overseer. I know what happens to people who kneel to empires. I know what happens to their children and their children's children. I know that once you start kneeling, it becomes easier each time, until you forget you ever stood tall. The holographic image of the Empress flickered, and for the first time, she seemed to be actually looking at the ceremony. Her eyes focused on Hyun, this small being who barely reached the chest of her overseer. Kelthax's hand moved to the weapon at his belt. You understand the penalty for refusing the ceremony? Execution. Immediate and final. Hyun didn't move, didn't flinch. He stood with his hands behind his back, looking directly at Kelthax. I understand, but I will not kneel. You can take my life, Overseer, but you cannot make me kneel. No one can. That is what it means to be human. The Vrex ambassador made a chittering sound of distress. The Nalthor rippled in its tank. The other species representatives looked away, as if they couldn't bear to watch what was about to happen. Kelthax drew his weapon, a crystalline blade that hummed with energy. He raised it high. The Valethran soldiers tensed, waiting for the order, but then something strange happened. Kelthax paused. He looked at Hyun, at this small being who stood calm in the face of death, and something flickered across the overseer's face. It might have been confusion. It might have been something else. Behind Hyun, Somin stepped forward. Then Ji-won. Then all the humans in the plaza moved forward, standing shoulder to shoulder with their administrator. None of them knelt. They all just stood there, silent and united. The Empress's holographic image flickered again. When she spoke, her voice was like ice. This defiance will not stand. Take the human into custody. I will decide his fate personally. Kelthax lowered his blade but did not sheath it. You have made a grave mistake, human. Hyun finally smiled, just a little. Maybe, but it's my mistake to make. That's the difference between us, Overseer. You cannot imagine refusing an order. I cannot imagine accepting one that's wrong. We'll see which philosophy survives longer. The Valathran soldiers moved forward and seized Hyun, pulling his arms behind his back. As they led him toward their ship, every human in the plaza remained standing. Not one of them knelt. And across the galaxy on 1,000 human worlds the word began to spread. Someone had refused to kneel. The Empire had been denied. Something had begun that day, something the Valathrans did not yet understand, something that would shake their 10,000-year reign to its foundations. One man had stood tall, and the galaxy would never be the same.